and welcome once again to the debate series on corruption. In this series, we examine a selection of very important national issues. Issues mainly arising from initiatives of the government of Guyana and issues which have generated considerable controversy, largely because of charges of corruption. We highlight these issues over a series of 7 public debates with the hope that they will be analyzed and the public duly informed. This is the 6th in the series, and in this discussion we focus NICIL, the National Industrial and Commercial Limited, and claims of corruption. Our intention is to engage and debate every issue with regards to NICIL, with the aim of separating the facts from the propaganda that surrounds it. I am Al Crichton, and with me is, as usual, a very distinguished panel. And we have with us Ms. Marcia Nadir-Sharma, who is our specialist on the program, and she is the Deputy CEO of NICIL. The Honorable Anil Nandalall, Attorney General. Mr. Christopher Ram, Attorney at Law and Chartered Accountant. Honorable Irfan Ali, Minister of Housing and Water. Now, the debate will take the form of discussion among the panelists. We will begin by asking each panelist to make an opening statement, and then before we move into the debate as such, we also have, contributing to the debate, comments and questions from members of our wider audience in the public, and they will send in their questions and comments through available electronic means. Now, we intend to begin with these opening remarks by members of the panel. We will allow them to make their opening remarks, and after we return from our first break, we can then engage in the real debate on any issues that they might have raised in those opening statements. Let us begin now by asking our expert, Mrs. Marcia Nadir-Sharma, Deputy CEO of NICIL, to begin by explaining to us exactly what is NICIL, the National Industrial and Commercial Limited.
Thank you, Al. The National Industrial and Commercial Investments Limited is actually a company that was incorporated in 1990 under what was the Old Companies Act and continued as an operating company under the 1991 Companies Act. NICIL as a company has essentially 21 objectives that are set out in its Memorandum of Association, which is also known as the bylaws. And in summary, those 21 objectives essentially gives NICIL, through its board of directors, the ability to sell, own, manage, promote investments either in the form of equity holdings, assets such as immovable properties, shares, stocks, debentures. And essentially our role, therefore, is to act as that intermediary mechanism to facilitate investment on behalf of the government.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We will then invite the Honorable Anil Nandalall, Attorney General, to make his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crichton. NICIL has come under tremendous criticisms and attack in recent times. As a result, this program was organized for us to have a discussion about NICIL and let us hear and discuss the problems that people have with NICIL. And when I say people, I speak of the politicians, because they have been the ones who have leveled the allegations. We have made available this forum. We have invited the APNU because Mr. Carl Greenidge in particular has been very vocal on the operations of NICIL, and the entire APNU has moved several motions in the Parliament using their one-seat majority along with the AFC. They have been able to pass those motions questioning and inquiring into a whole host of issues. An invitation was extended to the Alliance for Change also to partake in this discussion, because we feel that, you know, this forum should be made available to them and they should have come here. We expected them to come and to articulate the concerns that they have so that the public out there can hear what the views are and hear the government's explanation of what the position is from the government's perspective. We were told earlier that Mr. Moses Nakamoto would have been here. Unfortunately, he has not turned up. Mr. Christopher Ram is here. I don't know, he will explain in what capacity he is here. But the important issue is, as Marcia has said, NICIL was incorporated as a limited liability company with the purpose of privatizing, or rather being the execution unit of a privatization policy outlined by the People's Progressive Party when they took office in 1992. The privatization policy is not a secret. It was presented in the form of a privatization policy network paper by the Ministry of Finance in 1993, and this is the document. It has been widely circulated since 1993, debated in the Parliament, laid before the Parliament, and unanimously approved in the Parliament. You would recall at that time, Mr. Ramjatan and Mr. Nagamutu were part of the government side in the Parliament. They were very much part of this document. This document laid out a framework and a policy which the government intended at that time to employ in relation to assets that were identified for privatization.
You'll wrap up now.
The policy, as is outlined in this document, the underlying principle is that the process was going to be transparent. As far as I am aware and as far as the government is concerned, that policy has remained intact and we have followed that policy faithfully. The policy is being administered by a board run by the privatization unit. That board has on it labor representative, government representative, a representative of the private sector, and a representative of the consumer protection organizations.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we invite Mr. Christopher Ram, attorney at law and chartered accountant, to make his opening remarks.
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. My hope for this debate is that it's going to be fact-based, respectful, honest discussion among us as professionals and Guyanese, rather than PPP and opposition. Something that has bothered me, Mr. Moderator, is the way distortions have been paraded as fact or facts on this program and used to mislead viewers and upend the politicians, the opposition. Let me tell you how I plan dealing with this matter. I will provide you with a folder. Everything I say on this program is supported by extracts from official documents to support and buttress the points I will make. I would appeal to my colleagues to do the same kind of thing. Now, we've heard a lot what NICIL is about. Well, among the papers you have here, it says the primary objectives of the company are subscribing, taking, or otherwise acquiring other securities and holding government shares, etc. It says as well, effective January 1, 2002, a management cooperation agreement was signed appointing the privatization unit as exclusive manager of NICIL. It was agreed that the collecting, accounting of privatization proceeds, etc., will be done in the name of NICIL. It was also agreed at all costs, etc. Now, in your introduction, you said that the government had identified the topics for debate in this series. And Mr. Chairman, let me stick to my word and give you this folder, please. The criticism of NICIL is not only about corruption, but that it is a negation of the rule of law which underpins the Constitution and which make and provide fertile ground for non-transparency, lack of accountability, and corruption. Now, to the extent that NICIL has facilitated all sorts of transactions, it has diverted resources that should go into the consolidated fund, and it violates Article 216. But more importantly, Mr. Moderator, it also violates 217. I have a document today that shows how Cabinet directs a certain state enterprise to pay money to NICIL. That's what's happening. Now, so can I please finish? You notice I did not interrupt you?
Yeah, but you said that you
No,
have to be factual.
I
You
asked-
have to
You're
be
not
factual. You
fact-based.
set your own conditions.
You're just reading from a paper propaganda.
Okay.
You have to present facts.
Fine, okay. So we'll allow him to complete his statement and you will have ample time to refute.
Now, the fact is, to Mr. Moderator, we do not know the extent to which NICIL has engaged in corrupt transactions because NICIL does not prepare financial statements in accordance with either accounting rules or the Companies Act. And I'm sure the learned Attorney General can go to the various sections of the Companies Act and the
Totally
Public
not
Corporation
factual.
Act.
No, but you gotta identify them.
I will, I have
Totally
done
not
it.
factual.
So that we don't know. Let me give you a quick example. The accounts, all right, I will go through, fine.
Yes, because you will have an opportunity
Sure.
later to
Okay,
go
good.
into details.
Mhm.
All right, thank you very much. And now we will ask the Honorable Minister of Housing and Water, Mr. Mohammed Irfan Ali, to make his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Crichton. Very happy again to be on this program. The representative of the AFC, Mr. Christopher Ram, he's here in his capacity as a representative of the AFC.
I'm proud to do so. I'm proud to do so.
He ended his presentation well in that we don't know. This is how he ended his presentation just now. We don't know. He is admitting to the public here.
We don't know the
this evening,
extent, I said.
we don't know is that he's admitting to the public that he's basing his premises on allegations and on propaganda. He has no factual basis, no factual position. That is why he rightfully concludes that he don't know. He referred to the breach of rule of law. He can't point, he just make a statement. He did not point to what rule of law. There is a breach of what rule of law? A set of transaction, diverting of resources. What resources were diverted? Where were the resources diverted to? How was it diverted? Who benefited from it? These are the type of factual position that we need to be presented to the people who are looking at this program. It is also not true to say that NICIL is not operating under strict accounting policies and procedures. We know that NICIL, as a company, has submitted its audited financial statement up to 2010. This is a statement of fact. This can be verified. We know that many of the subsidiaries of NICIL would have submitted their annual statement to the National
I
Assembly.
said every statement
We
I
will
make
know
will be there.
that all the accounts and every single transaction of NICIL, every single transaction of NICIL under this government is on a website. It is open for public scrutiny, and the documents are available for the public to scrutinize. And I'm going to leave with the moderator copies of all the documents in relation to NICIL. And any member of the public can have these documents to scrutinize. So it is unfair, biased, and unethical to make a statement that these things are not presented, these things are not available, and that NICIL is operating outside of accounting policy. For a matter of fact, it was Mr. Christopher Ram, who was part of a consultancy that looked at the whole accounting process for NICIL. And he would know that it is provided that the Auditor General is the chief auditor for NICIL as a state company. And the Auditor General executes his duties as the auditor for the state company. So I want to commence by saying that we are already seeing a trend of trying to divert the issue and of just bringing propaganda and creating mischief.
Thank you very much. So those are the opening statements by all the members of the panel. And now we are going to move into debating issues. And our members are now free to refute arguments that had been raised by anyone else on the panel. Yes.
Well, Ms. Water, if I may, I mean, just to clarify on one statement that Mr. Ram made. He said that NICIL does not have its accounts audited, and this is completely inaccurate. The answer to NICIL's accountability in the form of accounts is answerable in two ways. The first way is the fact that NICIL, as an individual entity, as a standalone entity, submits to the Auditor General in accordance with Section 24 of the Audit Act of 2004, submits at the beginning of February of every year the management accounts for the preceding year to be audited in accordance with international accounting standards, as Mr. Ram would know those standards. The other issue is the Companies Act. Because NICIL is not a standalone company and actually has from year to year a varying number of children, as I would say, or subsidiaries, from between 14 to 20 depending on what year is being audited, the Companies Act actually says that consolidated accounts must be submitted by NICIL as the parent. Now, the realities are that those statements are also prepared by NICIL on the completion of the subsidiaries having done their work, and it is submitted to the Auditor General. So the facts are that NICIL as a standalone entity has audited accounts, audited financial statements of its operations and its transactions from 2002 to 2010. Right now, 2011 is being conducted, physically being conducted by field workers of the Auditor General's office. In relation to the consolidated accounts that have actually been laid in the National Assembly, NICIL has submitted 2002 to 2005 audited consolidated financial statements that have been laid in the National Assembly, and 2006 to 2010 have been submitted to the Auditor General for them to audit. So the facts are there. Whether it doesn't really matter who says what and interpretation of what, the reality and the facts are, they are done. It has been done, and it has been supplied to the people it has to be supplied to.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ram?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moderator, I can only laugh. This is how the Companies Act, the structure of the Companies Act with respect to financial statements is organized. Under Section 158 of the Companies Act, you have to prepare company accounts. Now, if you have subsidiaries, you must also, under Section 160, have group accounts. Now, the way you do that, and places like DDL and banks, GIH, etc., they have subsidiaries. You show the group, the company, current year and comparative year, group, current year and comparative year. Mr. Chairman, you have copies of what I've just said. I have copies of the annual reports that have been tabled in the National Assembly. They don't meet those requirements, Mr. Chair. I am not the one saying this. All you have to do, you see, I think there's been some misunderstanding.
Where does it not meet the requirement? Where does it not meet the requirement? Don't make a
Mr. Moderator,
I know him to answer
Mr. Moderator, I will address you.
Yes.
I will address you.
Yes.
Yes. 158 says that, and 160 says that. Now, additionally, I think it's Section 185 says you must do this within 6 months. Mrs. Marcia Nadir-Sharma is talking about 2004 and 2005, and that's the point we are making, that these accounts are not available. 158 is breached, 160 is breached, and the one dealing, the 185, with respect to the timeliness, you must do it, that's also breached. I think part of the confusion also, and a big one on the board, is Dr. Roger Luncheon. Dr. Luncheon described NICIL as a private company. Now, Dr. Luncheon has been on the board of NICIL for so many years. He could have asked the Attorney General. It is described as a government company subject to the reporting requirements of the Public Corporations Act. That's the construct of it. All of this you have, Mr. Moderator, and I hope you take the time to read it at some point.
All right, now thank you very much. I think now we are going to have to go to a break at this point. When we return, of course, the honorable ministers will, I'm sure, be ready to respond. We go to a break. Stacey.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to another week at the Feedback Desk. Now we go straight into our comments. Our first comment this evening is from Stephen Kisoon. Criticism over the past few months. People must, however, know that NICIL fiasco was intended to be a smokescreen for the AFC and a prominent private media house owner over Guyana stores and the impending Marriott construction. However, NICIL has been magnificently manipulated over the years to foster infrastructural development in Guyana. Success stories range from the Berbice River Bridge to the Marriott Hotel and many more. The opposition is creating a storm in a teacup and making claims that it cannot substantiate. Guyanese should be proud of NICIL. Annalise Humphrey says, I hope the Alliance for Change rep at tonight's proceeds came armed with the necessary documents to prove a claim made earlier this year by the party's leader, Kemraj Ramjatan. Ramjatan at a AFC press conference in May declared that the PPP has hidden in excess of $50 billion in secret bank accounts and that these monies were largely acquired and routed through NICIL. Thomas Cole, my gut feeling is that at the end of this debate, the opposition will once again shift the goalpost in regards to their earlier position on NICIL. It's a shame that the operations of that entity were used as a diversion from the shameful opposition 2012 budget cuts. Now, this is all for the first break. Remember to keep sending those comments at feedback@ncnguyana.com as well as facebook.com/NCNGuyana. Join us after the break.
Thank you very much, Stacey. And we return to the debate. Of course, questions and comments raised by the public are available for any response from members of the panel. As we come back, I invite Mr. Ali.
Thank you very much, Dr. Crichton. First of all, let me say from the interpretation of the expert, you will see that there is variance from the political interpretation given by Mr. Christopher Ram. What he is given is not based on any regulation, any law. What he's giving is a political
Anil, would you like to read this and explain it to the gentleman? Would you like to do that?
According to Section 160 of the Companies Act, NICIL as a parent company is required to prepare consolidated
accounts. Look at 158 now, young man.
Under Section 24 of the Audit Act, you know accounts equally as I know.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
Okay. Under Section 24 of the Audit Act of 2004, the Auditor General is required to audit the accounts of NICIL as an entity
in which
a majority interest with the state, in which a company has a majority interest with the state.
That's
now,
not an issue we've raised.
I am saying to you that the NICIL as a company has a responsibility to submit its accounts to the Auditor General. NICIL as a company has fulfilled its obligations and responsibility in sending its accounts to the Auditor General, who is named under Section 24 of the Audit Act to audit these accounts. So that is clear. NICIL has fulfilled its obligations and responsibility. It is the role of the auditor to say whether those accounts are within the international standards and regulations. All the accounts, all the management letter went to Parliament. We did not get any objection to the accounts. We did not get any objection as it relates to the standard and the preparation of those accounts. In addition, NICIL, as you rightfully also has the responsibility to, as a group, to submit accounts. And as Marcia pointed out, those accounts has been submitted and audited up to 2005. NICIL, whilst this is going on, a number of the subsidiaries would have also submitted and tabled in the National Assembly their annual reports and accounts. For a matter of fact, within the last 2 years alone, the Minister of Finance has laid in Parliament over 85 sets of accounts relating to NICIL and its subsidiaries. Over 85 sets of accounts relating to NICIL and its subsidiaries. And it's also not fair to
You see, we come to this.
But,
we
Mr.
don't
Moderator,
have.
can I please?
No, let me have your evidence, now.
Okay.
This is the evidence.
Mr. Ali,
Go to the parliament and see the evidence.
Oh,
your
I
final
see.
10 seconds will come, but okay. Mr. Nandalall.
Mr. Crichton, we cannot haggle on this program about interpretation of the law, because we will remain haggling for the entirety of the remainder of the program. We have to deal with what the facts are. The facts are that the Auditor General audits the accounts of NICIL annually, as is required by the Constitution of Guyana, because it's a government-owned and controlled company, and the Auditor General is mandated by the Constitution as well as the Audit Act to audit the accounts, and that has been done for NICIL as a company as of 2010. There cannot be any equivocation about that. Those
Why
reports,
not? Because you said?
those reports are laid in the Parliament.
They have not been laid, Mr. Nandalall.
They are
They are
laid in
audited.
the Parliament.
They have not been laid.
The auditors' reports are laid in the Parliament and sent to the Public Accounts Committee for their examination and analysis. Those are statements of fact. I don't know whether Mr. Ram is, I know that he's not in the Parliament, and I don't know what type of information he's being fed. I am in the Parliament, and I'm saying that that is done. Now the group, the umbrella companies in the NICIL umbrella, there are several other companies. Now there is a problem with those accounts, and those accounts are not up to date. But individually, their annual accounts as separate companies have been laid in the Parliament. But as a group, they have not been laid. Mr. Ram has been one of the auditors.
Is the group of accounts? I have not been an auditor, Mr. Nandalall.
Mr. Ram has been one of
please
the
correct
persons
yourself.
employed to audit one of the several satellite companies which fall under NICIL. So he knows about it.
Yes.
He knows about it.
All right.
Okay,
And he
Mr.
can-
Ram.
Mr.
I'm not finished.
Okay.
And therefore,
30 seconds.
but we can wrangle over accounts. The theme, the central focus here is the corruption. Where is the corruption? NICIL has done over 100, nearly 150 transactions. I want Mr. Ram to identify which rule of law has been infracted in the conduct of those transactions. I want Mr. Ram to identify out of the 100 odd transactions which one he feels is a corrupt one. I want him also to say which rule, which article of association or which bylaw of NICIL is violated in the conduct of those transactions. Those are the type of information that we must have here and debate, or else don't speak about NICIL and corruption.
Okay,
But
Mr. Ram.
Nandalall, I have brought it.
Mr. Ram, you're on the
You
floor.
brought it here, you should have given us, we don't even know
Why
that you were
should I-
going to come.
That's
All right,
your
could
problem.
you-
You've handed a folder to
He
the
brought-
moderator.
All right,
He
And then you are telling us what
misinterpretation.
is in the folder,
He
and you
brought-
expect me to accept that?
He brought
All
a
right.
misinterpretation
I thought-
based on political bias and unethical.
Who you give your folder
All
to?
right, we are
Analysis.
going to allow Mr. Ram to
Mr. Chairman,
respond.
Mr. Chairman,
We allow
if
Mr. Ram
no,
to
let
respond
me
in
tell you
full.
this, Mr. Chairman. If this kind of behavior continues, I'll walk off. I am not going to tolerate this nonsense. I really am not. Now,
You can't present
The-
the facts.
the-
Okay, please
Let me-
allow Mr. Ram to speak.
they are discomforted. Leave them. The point is this. A complaint has been lodged to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Guyana on these very infractions. And
Lodged by whom?
the minister said he's as good as an accountant. Well, I'm a bad accountant, so I'm not sure that you should be proud of that. We'll wait to see that. Now, on the question of tabling, and incidentally, I checked up to this afternoon, the library in the National Assembly is open to people to research. I went there. So Mr. Nandalall can't pull anything. Now, let me raise this issue. Let me raise this issue.
This
The
is a
accounts-
remarkable inaccuracy.
The accounts are tabled. The accounts are submitted by the entity to the responsible minister. Guess who the chairman of this entity is? It is the Minister of Finance. So the Minister of Finance, as chairman of NICIL, submits to the Minister of Finance as a member of Cabinet financial statements. He is then required.
It is a government.
He's then required to table. The minister, is required to table those things, not the Auditor General. And we've tried to correct this misperception for so many times. Is the minister, no member of the public can go table anything. It's the minister who does that. And I'm sure we'll get to the issue of audit later.
All right, so Mr. You want to respond to that?
I want to respond because Mr. Ram keep repeating this theory in his mind that there is something improper with the Minister of Finance chairing a government-owned company. And I wish to refute absolutely that there is nothing improper, nothing unethical, nothing unlawful with a minister of the government chairing a company that is owned and controlled by the government.
And reporting to himself.
For a matter of fact.
No, let me ask you. No, I'm asking you.
The Auditor General audits those accounts and that
independently.
And independently, constitutionally endowed with independence, and that report is presented to the Parliament. That is where the accountability comes in. Mr. Alcrichton, for the purpose of the viewers, if my father owns a company,
your government
and he
is not,
makes me the chairman.
Hey man, Anil, what's wrong with you, man?
What is wrong with that?
You want
this is a government
Okay.
company, and a minister of the government is chairing it.
You want the government
Mr.
to
Ali.
make you Mr. Chairman? Let me say this, that the burden of responsibility lies with the Minister of Finance. And the Minister of Finance is chairing the company, which means that the Minister of Finance is taking the burden of responsibility. What is wrong with the Minister of Finance or any minister executing his role or responsibility?
You're a minister?
Let me say this.
You're
an accountant. You're the most unethical accountant.
Okay, please,
Let me say this.
You were addressing a point, Mr. Ali.
Yes.
Address the point.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Ram claim as to where the money goes. From 1994 to 2011, more than $12 billion, more than $20 billion has been paid and transferred over to the Treasury. More than $20 billion from NICIL. Now let me say this to you, and I want you to bear me out for about 4 minutes.
Not four, please. Not four.
When we are talking about corruption, when we are talking about corruption and presenting facts, let me present to you some facts here that were documented by Mr. Udin Ishmael.
If we can do it in less than
The
2 minutes.
Demerara Woods Limited, when it was privatized in 1991, Mr. Ram, didn't you write the PNC manifesto in 92? You had a big role to play. Am I right? I'm asking you, am I right? You can't answer.
Continue,
But let me
please.
say, Demerara Woods Limited was one of the companies that was privatized. The company was sold to Lord Beaverwood, a former treasurer of the British Conservative Party. He bought the company in February of 1991 for £9.7 million. And he also negotiated a 50-year lease of 1.1 million acres of rainforest. 2 months later, he sold his interest to the United Dutch Company for £61 million. In 1992, 9 months later, the company was valued at £74 million. This is a company that was sold in 1991 by the then government for £9.7 million, valued in 1992, 9 months later, at £74 million. Who was the Minister of Finance, Anil? Carl B. Greenwich. Who was in government? The PNC. And they're talking about corruption. This is the type of facts. This is the type of evidence that we want to be presented.
How many years
Look
ago
at the Guyana Timbers Limited.
That took place,
Look at the Guyana Timbers Limited. The Guyana Timbers Limited was book value was $130 million US. The government then sold it for $23.2 million US in 91. 20% of the book value they sold it for. And for a matter of fact, they waiver the duty, the property transfer, they waiver the firm's operation costs, a cumulative sum of $1.6 million. Have you ever heard Mr. Christopher Ram, in all the glory that he claims he has, bring any of these issues up nationally? Have you ever, has Mr. Christopher Ram, been a accountant, ever represented any of these issues publicly? What is the interest? What is the vested interest in him staying silent on this and asking
Okay.
how many years ago this occurred? And I have many more like these that I'm going to outline.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
factually
thank you.
tonight.
can I make a point?
Yes, you may.
I wonder if the PPPC and if the government have all of this information, why don't they set up a commission of inquiry and bring people under oath to deal with these things? Why the hesitation? Is it because they themselves are more egregious than that? What is the reason?
Why must we, I don't, I am still awaiting for Mr. Ram to, look, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moderator, the population out there has been fed a diet of propaganda that this organization called NICIL is running amok with corruption. And I am yet to hear, out of 150 transactions from Mr. Christopher Ram, an accountant of long standing, and a person who writes newspaper articles weekly, and a person who does a great degree of scrutiny and examination of government entities with a critical eye, to say to us on this program which transaction NICIL has conducted over the last 20 years under this administration that he finds a problem with. Now, we have a book, and